So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 additional ways of getting user input. The first one, the radio button, is actually just another type of input tag that we've seen. It's similar to the checkbox. The next one is the select tag, and that's how we get the little drop-down menus. And finally, we're going to talk about TextArea, which is how we can create text inputs that are multiple lines long. So I'm going to start with our standard HTML boilerplate. Go ahead and add in a title and save that. Let's go ahead and add a radio button. So it's just input type equals radio, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to give the other one type equals checkbox, just so you can see them side by side. So this is a radio button here. I cannot turn it off once I've selected it. And this here is a checkbox, which I can toggle on and off. So the difference really is that the checkbox allows the user to select it or unselect it. So let's say this is a job site and you want them to select their skills. You want them to be able to say they're good with JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, or maybe only JavaScript. They're just a bunch of checkboxes to check on and off. So what that allows the user to do is to make multiple selections. A radio button, however, is usually used when the user has one choice. So an example typically on websites would be something like gender, where it asks you to check whether you're a male, female, or other, and you can only have one choice. You cannot not select. You have to pick one of the options. So to do that, let's say, for example, we're going to have a form where users pick if they prefer cats or dogs, and there's no option to pick both. So we're going to have 2 radio buttons, and if that's all we do to start, you can see I can pick one and I can also pick the other. Not quite what we wanted. We want to only be able to pick one. So the first thing I want to do is to get a form going, and I'm going to move my inputs into that form. So for now, we're just going to leave it at the default method of get request and the default action, which is just going to refresh the page. The next thing that we're going to do is to add a few labels. So I'm going to go ahead and use the for syntax. So this will be for dogs, and then we have to give our input an ID, dogs. Remember, those have to match. And same thing here, another label tag for cats, and then ID cats. So if we refresh, now we have our 2 choices, but I can still pick both. So what I need to do is tell HTML these 2 radio buttons are for the same choice. So you can pick one or the other, but they are one decision. To do that, we need to use the name attribute, which, remember, the name is given an individual input, a name that HTML can refer to it by. And it's also the way that it is stored or sent in the HTTP request. That name is important. So let's give it a name here. We're going to call it pet choice. And then on our input here, we're also going to give it the exact same name. And the reason we do that, you'll see in just a second, is that by giving them the same name, it then connects them so we can only pick one. So if I refresh, you see I can only click dogs or cats, but not both. And one more thing I'll show you, let's add a button at the end of the form. And what we've seen so far is actually input type equals submit at the bottom of the form. But I'm showing you a button just to show you that if the button is the last thing in the form, it will actually submit the form. So there's a few options to actually submit the form at the end. A button at the end or type equals submit. So now let's pick dogs. And remember, the name is pet choice. So we should see something up here in the query string, just like with any other inputs. When I click go, we see pet choice equals on, which is not what we expected. So we're missing one thing. We need to also say what value this decision is. So let me go ahead and add the value attribute. And let's just say this value will be dogs, and this one will be cats. So what this is saying is, if the user clicks on dogs, under the name pet choice, store the value dogs in all caps. If the user clicks cats and submits, under the name pet choice, store the value cats in all caps. So just to show that to you, let's click on dogs and go, and we get pet choice equals dogs. If we do that again, and this time if we choose cats, we get pet choice equals cats. So the next element we're going to talk about is the select tag. And what the select tag lets us do is create nice drop-down menus. So the tag name is called select. It's an opening and closing tag. And if I just do that and I refresh my page, I actually get a drop-down menu that's empty. So along with the select tag, we use the option tag. So inside of here, for every possible option that we want the user to pick, we add an option tag. So let's do a drop-down that lets the user pick their favorite color. And let's do a few options here. We'll do red, orange, and yellow. As you can see, we already get a nice drop down here with our choices. And if I select orange and hit go, you'll see we don't actually get something up here in the URL like we do if we select dogs. So let's do yellow this time and I'll hit go. I still only get pet choice, and that's because we do not have a name that we've provided. So on our select here, we need to give it a name, and let's just call it color. And I refresh my page. Let's click cats, and let's choose yellow. And watch up here as I hit go. I now get pet choice cats, and color is yellow. So what you'll see is that depending on the option that I selected, in this case yellow, the browser takes whatever that text is inside of that option and it just sends that as the value under the name color. We don't always want the value that is sent along with the request to be identical to whatever is displayed to the user in the drop-down. An example of that would be something like if we wanted the user to pick a mood. So let's say, what's your current mood? And we want to have a happy face here, an emotionless face, and a sad face. And we end up with this nice drop down here with our emoticons. But let's say when a user selects happy, we don't want all of this to be sent. Instead, we want the word happy to be sent or the word sad to be sent. To do that, we use the value attribute. So we'll say value equals happy, value equals neutral, and value equals sad. Now if I refresh and I click dogs, let's go with sad, and I click go, you can see I get pet choice is dogs and color is equal to sad. And of course, that's because we kept the name color. You might want to change that to mood just so that our markup is meaningful and actually makes sense. So cats, let's do happy. And there you go. Pet choice is cats and mood is equal to happy. So that's all we need to cover with selects. One other thing is the TextArea tag, and TextArea, I'll just pull it up on MDN, is a nice way to create inputs that are more than one line. So we've seen text inputs like this, input type equals text, and they're single lines. But what if we want to ask the user for a bio or to copy and paste their resume or something? That's not going to work very well with this really slim short input. So TextArea is actually another tag just like select. It's not an input with a type. It's actually a separate type of form control. And the way that it works is that there are two important parts. The first, we create a TextArea tag, and that on its own is going to give us this text area. But what we can also do is specify exactly how big that text area is using two attributes, rows and columns. So I'll show you that here. Let's start with 10 rows and 50 columns. And you can see that my text area expanded in both directions. So basically we can specify how many rows and how many columns to change the dimensions of our text area. One other thing about it, just like with these other elements, if I wanted to send this data in the request, let's get rid of this input here, I would need to give it a name. So I'm going to go with name equals paragraph. Fill out this paragraph with some text. I click go, and you can see I get paragraph equals whatever text I have in here.